Here's a follow-up from my composting video posted on October 12th, 2020. Today is November 29th, 2020, so it has been over 6 weeks since I added the cabbage scraps I got from the Woodstock International Food Festival. As you can see, I'm raking off the top layers of leaves. There is no sign of the leafy cabbage. The core of the cabbage is still there in the pile, and it even looks like more leaves sprouted. However, there is no sign of the cabbage leaves, and all of the brown tree leaves that were mixed with the cabbage leaves are all decomposed. There are worms in the pile, which shows that it's a fertile compost pile where nature is doing the work, breaking down with microbes the carbon and nitrogen. I decided to mix some more kitchen vegetable and fruit scraps into the compost pile and not add any more browns. I'll see if I can get the pine needles and sticks to decompose over time. This woody material doesn't decompose quickly, so if you want quick compost, make sure you keep sticks and pine needles out of the pile. If you use cardboard instead of leaves, make sure you tear up or shred the cardboard so that it decomposes faster. Good microbes and worms will thrive in the pile and give you compost fast. In the video I posted back on October 12th, I mentioned that 2 ingredients are needed in the compost pile: water and oxygen. I should have stated that actually 4 ingredients are required. The other 2 ingredients, nitrogen and carbon, were presupposed when I explained the easy compost pile in that video. Now, nitrogen and carbon are often referred to as greens and browns, respectively. Greens and browns don't necessarily correspond to the actual color of the material that is added to the compost pile. For example, coffee grounds are rich in nitrogen, but of course they are black or dark brown in color. The main thing is to have a good mix of both nitrogen, found in vegetable scraps, coffee grounds, and fresh cut grass, among other things, and carbon, found in brown leaves and paper products such as cardboard. My favorite items to compost for nitrogen are vegetable and fruit scraps, coffee grounds, and fresh cut grass. For carbon, I like brown leaves, which nature provides in abundance every fall in my yard from all the trees in my backyard. I always save the leaves. I'll blow or rake them into piles in my backyard and leave them piled up to compost on their own if I don't use them in compost piles with nitrogen. The items rich in nitrogen and carbon mixed together along with water and oxygen is the perfect recipe for a compost pile. Whatever you do, you don't want to pile up a bunch of kitchen scraps without mixing it with carbon. Otherwise, you'll just have a pile of rotten food that will take a long time to break down and will be very smelly. The compost pile with a good mix of greens and browns and properly covered with browns doesn't have a bad smell at all. In my compost pile here in this video, the only thing that is left is the woody material such as sticks and pine needles. If I would have mixed only the cabbage leaves and the brown tree leaves, this pile would be a rich compost ready for the garden. So here I am adding more kitchen scraps, vegetable scraps. You can see cucumbers and carrots, onions, and the peels of all these things. So the skin of an orange, or you can see a lime, some limes that I put in there. So the skin alone is fine. The peels from the vegetables or the fruit is fine, or the whole fruit if it's gone bad, and you can just throw it in there. And I like to use the flat shovel, a shovel with a flat blade, to break that up and chop it down into smaller pieces. So I'm mixing just the nitrogen-rich ingredients into this compost pile, and I'm just going to allow the browns that are in there to be mixed with it. I'm not going to add more browns such as the leaves, which will quickly decompose, but since I have so many pine needles and woody material in there, I'll just add nitrogen-rich ingredients over time and just keep this compost pile going until those pine needles decompose. So that's it. You can see that composting is really pretty simple. Just let nature take its course. Put the ingredients together, the nitrogen and the carbon ingredients, and pile it up. And as long as there's moisture and oxygen, nature will take its course. And if it's a big pile over time, you may want to just turn the pile. And if it's dry, you definitely want to add some water. But I find that in the composting I've done, the moisture just seems to be retained in the pile over a long period of time. So I never usually have to add water. And but if it's not decomposing, just mixing it up, getting more oxygen in there will help a lot. And if it's a big pile, you may want to do that. There are techniques of doing a hot compost pile, and you would need it to be a bigger pile. I've tried it in the past. It's just not worth it. But you can create a hot compost pile with nitrogen and carbon, and you may have to turn the pile more often, every 2 or 3 days, to make sure that plenty of oxygen is going in there, and making sure that it has water. But the hot compost pile will get very hot, and will steam, and I think they can get up to 120 degrees or even hotter. And that's a good method too. But for me, I found that just is too much work. I don't have time to monitor it and go out there every couple of days. And so the method I like to use is just mix everything together, put it in a pile, cover it up with leaves, and it will decompose on its own. And if I don't need it until the spring, I'll just leave it. And every time I have kitchen scraps, I'll rake off the top of the pile, add some more scraps in there, mix it in with the pile, cover it back up with leaves, and I'm done with it. So composting is really super easy. The way I do it is easy for me.